So, Dr. Jack, what does risk quantifications fit in with that whole scenario that you just explained?
Yeah, and this is an important topic, so much so that we wrote a follow-on paper covering just this exact topic.
Yeah.
So boards are very familiar with financial projections and forecasting. Uh, Most organizations have some function that's doing this all over the place. We have sales forecasts, we have expense forecasts. And for publicly traded companies, they have to signal to the market, what those projections are and ensure that they're based upon, solid estimation techniques. For some reason, we've avoided this in cybersecurity for a long time, but there is a very growing and very vibrant community of people that are beginning to bring these types of disciplines, namely thinking about cybersecurity from a quantitative financial perspective, into their management and ultimately up to their boards. There's a couple key questions I think that come about that drive organizations' need for cyber risk quantification or CRQ. Typically, when boards begin to think about, and when organizational risk management functions begin to think about, do we have the right amount of cyber insurance and cybersecurity insurance? Do we have the right amount of insurance? You have to sort of begin to ask very simple questions like, well, how much do I think I'm going to lose, and how much do I need to cover that? These are very financially focused questions, clearly, and also hint subtly at things like your appetite for financial losses associated with cybersecurity. Just like when we all purchase, property and casualty lines for ourselves, we have to think about what's the deductible, what's the premium, is that reasonable to us? Are we okay paying out of pocket this much in order to get this much of coverage later? All those things really matter, and this sort of drives a financial conversation for boards as well. Particular to financial services companies, although it should be a practice of a lot of companies, is the notion of something called capital allocation. So the official rule states that for all operational risks, of which cybersecurity is one of them, capital must be allocated to them in some way. What you can think about this as is sort of like a rainy day fund. If something bad happens, we have money in the bank to sort of cover that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of organizations should think about, putting money aside for bad things. Otherwise, they have to pay out of their current revenues, which could definitely depress them in the marketplace if that's something that they're worried about from a credit rating perspective. So cyber risk quantification answers those kinds of questions, and that sort of drives this notion, at least from the very top of the organization. How do we measure the things that we're doing that way? Now, other sources of interest around cyber risk quantification come from trying to prioritize budget and spending and a list of broken things that we have to care about. So those same missing controls or deficient controls that we talked about as being tied into this hierarchical list of things going up to the board is oftentimes numerous for a lot of organizations. And likewise, despite budgets being very generously allocated to some organizations, they're still not infinite. And in some cases, they're even getting tightened. So how do you allocate a limited number of dollars to a near infinite number of things that could be fixed, accounting for a dynamic adversarial threat component that changes daily, weekly, and monthly? And that's really where cyber risk quantification comes into play. It's better understanding the top things that we have to worry about outside of us subjectively saying that it's high, medium, and low. We still can translate CRQ values into high, medium, and low. In fact, we should. That same conversation around risk appetite comes into play here. Are we willing to lose money associated with this type of failure, or do we need to reallocate that money somewhere else to make things better? So CRQ kind of looks to add ranges of estimates around what particular loss scenarios look like. And it's critical also, thinking back to that same hierarchy of cybersecurity controls leading all the way up to organizational objectives, to better understand that. If we had a ransomware attack, how much money would we lose? If we had a ransomware attack on this particular system that's attached to this business line that leads to this organizational objective, it's a little easier to answer that question. And when you do that, that gives you the opportunity to really sort of think about dollars associated with with these attacks. What's our response cost going to be? Well, how many hours do you think we're going to take to respond to it? Do we have to bring in outside help? And what's their hourly rate? What's our loaded cost rate for internal people working on this kind of thing? All those kind of things come into play in thinking about how we respond to this. But externally too, we have to think about, is this going to cause us to lose customers or lose transactions from our customers? If so, how many and how much, and what do you think that's worth to the organization?
Yeah.
You'll find that as you begin this as a cybersecurity professional, as you begin to get better connected with line of business leaders and get better connected with the way that the company operates and makes money, these questions come a little bit easier, and you get this all important connection that all security organizations want, which is to bring you closer to the business. That sort of security business integration, that's sort of a holy grail for security organizations, comes better when you understand and can speak the language that business cares about.
Wow. Well, that was a lot.
Sorry.
No, not at all. By the way, I think we should do another entire podcast on risk quantification, cybersecurity risk quantification, and highlight the paper we worked on.
I think you heard it right here. I think we're going to do that.
Yeah. So you're committing on camera to
Absolutely.